Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening. It's Friday, July 30th. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. We have some breaking news. A staggering number of COVID cases just released in San Diego County. And as the Delta variant spreads, San Diego County will soon require its employees to either be vaccinated or submit to regular testing. A look now at the numbers from County Health show 1,273 cases reported today. That is the highest daily total since February 5th. While the county and others are taking new precautions, KPBS reporter John Carroll tells us why one expert says we should be doing much more.
The news from the county came in a tweet Thursday night. It said employees will have to verify they've been vaccinated or undergo regular testing. But when? A county spokesperson sent us a brief statement which says in part that those details are still being worked out, but implementation is expected by mid-August. At the same time, word from the Marine Corps that masks will now be required indoors, whether vaccinated or not, at MCAS Miramar, Camp Pendleton, and at Marine Corps Air Station Yuma.
There hasn't been enough accepting about this contagiousness of this virus.
Vice President of Scripps Research, Dr. Eric Topol, is a nationally recognized expert in molecular biology. He says requiring masks indoors should have happened a couple of months ago when the CDC started seeing the Delta variant take off in parts of the U.S. And he says we're still committing unforced errors in our response to Delta, beginning with the FDA not giving full approval to the vaccines.
It's months overdue. Had we had the full approval, we would have had tens of millions of more people vaccinated by now.
An article in the Washington Post from late Thursday is also causing renewed alarm. It cites an internal slide presentation from the CDC saying the Delta variant spreads as quickly as chicken pox, and that fully vaccinated people can easily spread it to each other.
It's overriding people who've been vaccinated. Not a large number, a small number, but they can have this viral load that's high and transmit the virus to others.
Because of that, Topol says the county's goal of getting to 75% of residents fully vaccinated is not enough. 70% are fully vaccinated now.
We have to up our defense, and that means getting as high as possible, some estimates of 90% now.
Topol says the federal government should be distributing rapid tests, as some countries in Europe are doing. But for now, he says all of us, vaccinated or not, need to be masking up anytime we leave our residence, especially if we're indoors. Along with being vaccinated, it's the best way to protect ourselves and others. Topol estimates the Delta variant should begin subsiding in 6 to 8 weeks, or at least that's the hope. John Carroll, KPBS News.
The Sweetwater Union High School District is confirming the campuses where COVID-19 cases have been found since in-person classes started last week. In all, 47 students and staff have tested positive at the 17 schools that you see on your screen. The district says it has followed the CDC's cleaning and disinfection recommendations at those sites. The district is also providing weekly testing as well as vaccinations for its 40,000 students and staff. Cries of discrimination were heard during a rally downtown today. A local group is urging businesses to not discriminate against customers who are unvaccinated. KPBS reporter Alexandra Rangel has more from the proclamation they're hoping restaurants will adopt.
Please do not comply with this. Please don't segregate people. Please don't make people feel ashamed for not taking the vaccine.
Reopen San Diego is a local group advocating for the full reopening of schools and businesses. It's now asking restaurants to adopt the proclamation. They rallied outside of City Hall Friday, asking businesses to not discriminate against unvaccinated customers. Restaurant owner Alondra Ruiz says everyone is welcomed at her restaurant, regardless of vaccine status. She's urging other restaurants to do the same.
No business, no politician, nor the government has any business requiring or pushing the agenda for vaccination ID.
The group called out Mayor Todd Gloria for a comment he made in a Twitter post Sunday. He implied that the first restaurant to require vaccine verification deserved a mayoral proclamation. Amy Reichert with Reopen San Diego was outraged by the mayor's response,
saying that he wanted businesses in San Diego to discriminate against my son. You see, vaccines aren't even available to children under 12.
We reached out to the mayor for comment, but have not heard back from him or his team. President of the chamber, Jerry Sanders, says he's in favor of asking workers for vaccine verification.
Being aware of other people's positions, and you don't want to make anybody else sick. You don't want to be spreading the virus. We know that this can still be very deadly with a lot of people who have not been vaccinated, and I don't think it's much to ask somebody to wear a mask.
As of now, there are no county-wide vaccine mandates, but the County of San Diego says they will require vaccine verification for their employees starting mid-August. Those who are unvaccinated will have to undergo weekly testing. The county is the latest to adopt a vaccine policy, with universities and other businesses following suit. Alexandra Rangel, KPBS News.
It's back to the business of conventions in downtown San Diego. A ceremonial reopening took place to welcome back visitors and the big money they'll bring to our economy. KPBS reporter Melissa May was there.
The San Diego Convention Center will welcome its first show this Sunday, August 1st, in large part because of the county's vaccination efforts.
San Diego is among the most vaccinated of major convention destinations in the United States. More than 70% of our eligible population is fully vaccinated.
Rip Ripito is the San Diego Convention Center's president and CEO. He says the facility served the community in other ways for the last 15 months.
We never really shut down. We operated as a homeless shelter. We operated as an emergency intake site for children, unaccompanied minor children. So we've had probably more experience than most in operating through a pandemic.
The convention center did take an economic hit.
We lost 150 events over that 15-month window, and it equated to $2 billion in economic impact into the community.
The reopening comes amid new worries about the Delta variant. County Supervisor Nora Vargas addressed those concerns.
And they're going to be requiring masks, right, inside the convention center. But at this time, we're just monitoring and doing whatever the safest guidelines are from CDC guidelines, et cetera. And right now, it's just making sure that people get vaccinated, but it's not mandated to come into the convention center.
Ripito says protocols are in place to keep people safe.
Through October 1st, any show that has 5,000 attendees or more are required to show that they are either negative test or have been vaccinated. We've gone through and done improvement on ventilation systems. We've put signage in restrooms talking about personal hygiene. We've got disinfecting stations throughout the venue for people.
They also have a cleaning protocol that matches the California Department of Public Health and Cal OSHA standards, and cleaning is done throughout the day. Some notable upcoming events scheduled at the Convention Center are the Celebration of Life for Father Joe Carroll on August 10th, and Comic-Con Special Edition will be in town November 26th to the 28th. Melissa May, KPBS News.
The federal eviction moratorium expires tomorrow, but here in California, a state law will protect most low-income renters from evictions through the end of September. The law uses $5.2 billion in federal money to pay off 100% of unpaid rent from April 2020 through September 30th, 2021. Meanwhile, President Biden is urging Congress to extend the federal moratorium, but said he would allow it to expire. More than 3.6 million Americans are at risk of eviction. And President Biden is stressing the threats of climate change and calling for more resources to fight wildfires here in the West.
We're in for a long fight yet this year, and the only way we're going to meet those challenges is by working together. Wildfires are a problem for all of us, and we have to stay closely coordinated and doing everything we can for our people.
Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris attended a virtual meeting with governors of Western states, including Governor Gavin Newsom. The intense heat and drought linked to climate change has turned the fires into a national challenge, with smoke impacting air quality as far away as New York City. Some good news for those looking to enjoy the beach and ocean in the South Bay. Health officials have lifted the water closure for beaches from the international border to the south end of Seacoast Drive. Testing has confirmed the ocean water is safe for recreational use following recent sewage impacts.
We are talking about a summertime pattern that's so typical for us this time of year. More of the same weather we saw over the past few days, which means it's mild and largely dry. There's only going to be a few mountain showers out there if we see anything at all. A lot of that moisture is focused a little farther north and it continues to move north this time of year with the monsoon. So for tonight, 69 in the city with only a few extra clouds out there, and Oceanside coming in the 60s too. We'll be at 64 there, 65 in Mount Laguna, 82 in Borrego Springs. This weekend, the pattern, well, that's the trend of that monsoonal moisture getting lofted farther and farther north into parts of southern Idaho and southern Oregon, where they'll have the risk for flooding. But I don't think there's going to be a lot of wet weather here for eastern and southern California. So that's going to be fairly limited. Spotty showers if we see anything at all. All thanks to an upper level high that's in place, which will put the city around 78 for tomorrow, 77 in Oceanside, Chula Vista coming in at 80, Borrego Springs closer to 105. Futurecast, not a whole lot happening. Those clouds out there, again, maybe a spotty shower or two. I think this is a bit overdone by the Futurecast model here, but can't completely rule it out towards some of the mountains. And that's for Saturday as we go into Sunday. Still looking pretty quiet. Again, this upper level high is going to strengthen heading into Monday and Tuesday. So any rain chances that we see become less likely as we get into the early start of the week for our area, and that's actually going to push those showers, at least the more numerous ones, a little farther towards the east. So for the coast, looking largely dry here. Fog, then sunshine for your setup for the weekend, and temperatures in the upper 70s, maybe close to 80 by Monday. Heading through our inland communities, upper 80s, closer to 90 degrees, and pretty quiet as we keep things fairly bright and remaining dry. And once we work our way into some of the mountains here, we're talking mid 70s. Again, rain chances not very prominent, but notice where we do have those extra clouds. That would be Saturday. And as we move into the desert locations, we're seeing some sunshine break out and temperatures on the rise slowly into the middle of next week. For KPBS News, I'm AccuWeather meteorologist Melissa Constanzer.
With the U.S. involvement in the Afghanistan war coming to an end after 20 years, the Dark Horse Battalion suffered the highest percentage of casualties of any Marine unit. KPBS military reporter Steve Walsh says the Camp Pendleton Marine Unit is still trying to reconcile their legacy a decade after they returned home.
At the time the Dark Horse Battalion left Helmand Province in 2011, they had 184 wounded Marines, 34 of them amputees, and 25 dead. Among them, the son of four-star Marine General John Kelly. In 2013, before he retired, Kelly spoke at a ceremony at Camp Pendleton. He urged the Marines to honor those who had served their country.
And in many cases, fought and died for it. And never forget your buddies that never made it home.
All right, get across. Let's go. Let's go. Go, 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 go. A decade after the survivors came home, it's still difficult to place the legacy of the unit that suffered the highest number of casualties in the war. Logan Stark collected hours of footage shot by his fellow Marines as Dark Horse pushed back against the Taliban during heavy fighting.
And this was kind of in that little sweet zone before the Marine Corps started highly regulating people filming stuff.
He came back that April, and by August he had left the Corps and enrolled as a student at Michigan State. During that whirlwind, he started making a documentary, interviewing members of Dark Horse. Initially, he thought he was the only one having panic attacks.
And that's what I think a lot of people just and me specifically, I didn't understand. It's like, it's okay to be going through all this. Like there's reasons behind all of it. And it just didn't seem like we were like really good at communicating that to our peers.
His documentary called For the 25 is still on his YouTube channel. Even the veterans of the most celebrated units of the war have had a tough time describing the war in Afghanistan. Marcus Chischilly lost his left leg to an IED 2 weeks after he arrived.
Every day for that first year when I was back in the United States was like reliving that moment. It was a really big struggle to try to figure out, what my life was going to be like after that.
After 2 years in the hospital, he is now married with small children and walking on a prosthetic.
We were there to protect each other. We were there to bring each other home. We were there to fight, yes, for our country and to accomplish our mission, but every single day was about, I got you. Like, you're my brother. I'm going to make sure you get home today.
Gretchen Catherwood's son, Alec, was killed in October 2010.
It's not an every moment of every day kind of thing. I mean, it's constantly in my brain and it's always there. There are some days that are horrible and there are some days that are okay.
She was in the audience when General Kelly spoke at the memorial in 2013.
After the remembrance ceremony and seeing the looks in those guys' faces, in their eyes, I said, there's got to be something we can do.
She and her husband moved from Illinois to Tennessee, where they're building a quiet lake retreat for combat veterans to honor the Dark Horse Battalion.
Just a cool, peaceful place to hang out with people who get it, who you can speak without fear of offending, but they can talk to each other. Really, nobody can help a combat veteran like a combat veteran.
Each bedroom is named after one of the 25 who died, with plaques for 6 Dark Horse Marines who have since died by suicide.
And I believe that they are a casualty of war every single bit as much as those who were killed in action are.
It's their monument to an ongoing sacrifice in a war that cannot easily be explained. Steve Walsh, KPBS News.
More than 200 Afghans are starting new lives in the United States. The first flight evacuating translators who worked alongside American troops and their family members arrived in Virginia today. They're staying at a hotel on the Fort Lee Army base. Several more flights are planned for Afghans who fear reprisals from the Taliban as the last U.S. troops leave. Congress approved legislation allowing 8,000 visas and $500 million in funding for the program. The easing of COVID-related travel restrictions has created a surge in demand for passports. Wait times for new passports and renewals are now up to 18 weeks. Even expedited appointments can take up to 12 weeks. In Los Angeles, hundreds of people camped out overnight this week to claim same-day appointments, but they were then told walk-ins were no longer being taken. One woman trying to get her passport showed how no one is even answering the phone.
And you can't get through to nobody at all.
Thank you for calling.
And then it's going to say goodbye, see? You can't get through. You can't go on the website. You can't get through the phone. People are driving all the way out here for no reason. We're sitting out here, and now they're not going to take walk-ins at all, and you can't make appointments. What's the point?
The U.S. State Department says the backlog of up to 2 million passport requests means that applications submitted now probably will not be processed until the fall. You may be wondering if or when you might need another COVID-19 booster shot. As Marley Ginter shows us, clinical trial underway here in California may answer that question.
Some of the first to roll up their sleeves now ready to do it again as UC Davis Health researches the impact of a third dose of the COVID-19 vaccine.
When we hear booster shot, is it different than the original shots then that you've received?
It is not. They chose not to do a different vaccine.
Dr. Timothy Albertson, leading the latest clinical trial, says this is the long haul for a disease that's been mutating quickly. Dr. Albertson says there were additional vaccines to consider and even discussion about one that might be a higher affinity for some of the variants. But instead, this clinical trial will be a continuation of the Pfizer vaccine trial that started about a year ago, with a portion of those who participated now randomly getting a booster or a placebo.
We're actually going to be measuring antibodies to COVID. We've got their baseline, We've got their baseline when they started naively last July. We've got their response to the therapy.
By analyzing all that data, researchers can track how much time passes before someone needs another dose. After all, over time, your immune system forgets the initial vaccination. A critical clinical trial of a third dose, while some have yet to get the shot at all. Dr. Albertson says putting everyone at risk of the virus aggressively mutating even more.
There are people out there who say they won't get the original, let alone a booster. That's the part I don't understand. I don't understand the risk-benefit ratio is so clear.
And if you haven't gotten your first or second shot yet, you can find a location near you on our website, kpbs.org, and click on the vaccines link right there on our homepage. 3 Republican candidates in the September recall election have reached the threshold required to get an endorsement from the state party. The rules say a candidate must have at least 200 delegate nominations by 11:59 p.m. on Saturday to be eligible for a party endorsement. So far, only talk show host Larry Elder, former San Diego Mayor Kevin Faulconer, and Assemblyman Kevin Kiley have reached that number. The final vote on a party endorsement is August 7th. The National Science Foundation is investing $20 million in artificial intelligence research at UC San Diego. KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson has the details.
UC San Diego's Jacobs School of Engineering will host one of 11 artificial intelligence institutes. Each institute got a 5-year grant with the goal of improving various aspects of AI. In San Diego, researchers hope artificial intelligence will help them optimize the way specialized computer architecture is built.
It's the scale and complexity that's kind of blocking us today, and we want to break through these barriers.
UC San Diego's Andrew Kong says artificial intelligence could help sift through mountains of data to uncover efficiencies. Working with local companies is part of the process.
We have very natural, tight collaborations or deep relationships with industry, especially in what we have proposed as our focus areas or use domains, namely chip design, robotics, and communication networks.
The NSF funding is the second round of funding for artificial intelligence. The effort has now grown to include the work of several hundred researchers looking at different aspects of machine learning. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
While top athletes from around the world are competing for glory at the Tokyo Olympics, one teenager from Encinitas is preparing to represent the U.S. at the Paralympics. Also being held in Tokyo, it's an international competition for athletes with disabilities. KPBS's Alexander Nguyen brings us his story.
Watching Joe Gomez run on the track, and you wouldn't know the recently turned 18-year-old is legally blind.
So my visual impairment is called blue cone monochromacy, and I have had it since birth. It's a genetic condition.
It means that things further than an arm's length are a blur, and he can't differentiate between certain colors, such as orange cones on green grass.
So once my dad was actually running alongside me, they had already packed up at the end of the meet because our race was the last race of the day. So he was carrying the chair and holding our dog on the leash and telling me, go this way. And the announcer was saying, parents, please don't run with your athletes. So we had to explain to the announcer after that.
In high school, Joe ran with sighted runners. Competing for the Paralympics was never the dream. In fact, Joel and his parents didn't even know about it. It was through a phone call with the U.S. Track and Field Para-Athletics Committee Chairman Richard Roberts that the Gomez's learned about the Paralympics.
I was the one that contacted him when they would not let Joel wear sunglasses at his competition in high school. And so Richie Robert asked me on the first phone call, he said, well, how fast is he? And how legally blind is he?
It was through that call that Joel's parents eventually agreed to let Joel be visually classified with the Paralympics. He's classified in T13, the least visually impaired division. It means he can differentiate between shadows and forms.
409.39 for Joel Gomez. A very good run by the American.
While Tokyo is Joel's first Paralympics, he is no stranger to competing on the world stage.
In 2019, I was nominated to the World Junior Parathletic Championships, which were held in Knottwil, Switzerland. And I competed in the 1500 meters and 400 meters there, and I won gold in both events. And then I went to the Pan American Games, which were held in Lima, Peru, that August, and I finished second in the 1500 meters, so I won silver in that event.
Still, making the U.S. Paralympics team wasn't a sure thing, so when his name was announced,
it was just pure ecstasy. It was amazing.
Alexander Nguyen, KPBS News.
In Tokyo, Joel will be competing in the 1500 and 400 meter races. The Paralympics competitions start August 24th and go through September 5th.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, new data from the CDC reveals how dangerous the Delta variant is. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
Huge crowds are descending on Chicago's Grant Park for the Lollapalooza Music Festival. The 4-day festival started yesterday and is expected to draw roughly 100,000 people each day. To get in, attendees have to present vaccination cards or a printed copy of a negative COVID-19 test that is no more than 72 hours old. Even though it's outdoors, people who are unvaccinated also have to wear masks. Disneyland and Disney World are asking guests to mask up indoors again. Starting today, the resorts in Anaheim and Orlando will require workers and guests ages 2 and up to wear face covering indoors. That includes people who are vaccinated. The new masking rules are in line with the updated guidance released this week by the CDC. Also today, Disney announced all its employees will be required to get vaccinated. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. I hope you have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.